The cage and the girl. The underground base was cold. The walls were metal. The air smelled like rust and the lights never blinked. It felt more like a prison than a lab. But no one spoke about that. Not out loud. Jace had only been on this planet for 3 days. He was young, just 24, with a quiet face and a soldier's uniform too big for his thin body. They gave him one simple job: feed the creature in cell 9. The guards laughed when they told him. "Don't get too close," one warned. "She'll bite your fingers off," another added. Jace didn't laugh. He didn't ask questions either. He just took the metal tray of food, plain protein bars and water, and walked down the silent hallway, counting the cells. 1, 2, 3, at cell number 9, he stopped. It was dark inside. The light above the cage flickered, then died. The bars were thick, made of steel and shock wires. Someone had carved strange symbols into the floor, maybe to keep her calm or maybe to warn others. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. At first he saw nothing. Then, movement. A shape shifted in the corner. Thin, curled, barely breathing. Her skin was pale purple, hair dark like ink, long and tangled. Shackles were on her wrists and ankles, chains tight like she might run any second. But she didn't look dangerous. She looked broken. Jace slowly placed the tray near the bars. "Food," he said softly. The girl didn't move. Her eyes stayed shut. Her back was pressed to the cold wall. Her legs were tucked under her like she was trying to disappear. Jace crouched lower. "I'm not here to hurt you." Still, no response. Suddenly, the lights behind him flickered. Another guard walked past and smirked. "Waste of food if you ask me," the guard said. "That thing hasn't eaten in 2 days. Just throw the tray and go." But Jace didn't throw it. He slid it gently under the small gap. Then he did something no one else had done. He waited. The guard walked off, grumbling. Minutes passed. Then the girl's eyes opened. Golden, bright, watching him. Jace's heart skipped a beat. Not because he was afraid, but because there was. No anger in her eyes, no rage, just fear. She reached for the food, but stopped. Her hands shook. She looked at him like she was expecting pain. Jace slowly stood up and took a few steps back. "It's okay," he said. "Eat." Only then did she move. She grabbed the bar quickly and pulled it close to her chest. She didn't eat like a monster. She ate like someone who hadn't tasted food in days. Small bites, careful chewing. Jace watched her in silence. For a long moment, the only sound was her chewing and the buzz of the broken light above. He couldn't help but speak. "What's your name?" No answer. He tried again. "I'm Jace, you don't have to be scared." She looked up for a second, then down again. Jace sighed. He wanted to say more, but the shift was over. He turned to leave but looked back one last time. Her eyes followed him as he walked away. That night he couldn't sleep. He thought about her eyes. Everyone called her a savage, a monster, a creature. But those eyes weren't wild. They were sad, tired, like someone who had lost everything. What had they done to her? The next morning he returned to cell 9. Another tray. Same food. Same hallway. This time she was already awake, sitting up against the wall. She looked at him as he approached, still silent. But something had changed. Jace knelt again. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer, but her eyes didn't look away this time. He placed the food gently again. She crawled toward it, slower today, as if testing him. Their hands came close, only inches apart. Jace didn't move. She froze, staring at his hand, then slowly picked up the food, never blinking. He didn't leave right away. He sat outside her cage watching her eat. A question burned in his mind. Who locked her up? And why? He looked down at the scars on her arms. Some were old, some fresh. This wasn't the cage of a monster. It was the prison of someone they were trying to hide. And Jace, the quiet soldier no one noticed, had just seen the truth. She wasn't dangerous. She was hurt. And maybe, just maybe, she needed someone. For the first time in weeks, the alien girl had eaten 2 full meals. That fact alone was a surprise to everyone on base. But what surprised Jace the most was her eyes. The next morning, when he stepped into the long corridor, something was different. She was already sitting close to the bars, waiting. Her golden eyes didn't blink when he entered. She didn't growl. She didn't hide. She just stared, straight at him, not at the food, and Jace felt it deep in his chest. She remembers me. No one else believed it, of course. She's just watching for weakness, one of the guards said, waiting for a chance to lunge. But Jace shook his head. There was no anger in her eyes, no hate. It was something softer, curious, maybe even hopeful. He walked closer and knelt again, just like before. "Morning," he whispered. No reply. But she tilted her head slightly, like she understood the tone, even if not the words. He placed the tray gently under the bars and waited again. She didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on him. So Jace tried something bold. He picked up one of the protein squares and took a small bite. He said with a smile. "See? Safe." He held the rest out, through the bars. Her eyes widened. For a long time, she didn't move. Then slowly, so slowly, she leaned forward. Her hand reached out, scared, shaking, and brushed his fingers as she took the food. Their skin touched for half a second. Her hand was warm. Not cold, not alien. Warm. And for Jace, that tiny moment changed everything. Back in his room, Jace pulled out his data pad. He began writing notes. Day 4. She looked directly at me today, took food from my hand. No signs of aggression, only fear, and maybe trust. He stared at the words. He had fed wild dogs during training. He had handled dangerous alien prisoners before. But this wasn't the same. She wasn't wild. She was wounded, and he was beginning to believe someone had told a lie. Later that night, Jace made a small plan. He returned to Cell 9 with a second tray. He had added 2 soft fruits he had taken from the officer's meal hall. Technically against orders, but he didn't care. She was curled up again, but when she saw him, her eyes lit up. No one had ever brought her anything extra before. He sat down quietly. "This one's sweet," he whispered, holding up a red fruit. "You'll like it." She crawled closer to the bars. Instead of fear, now her movement had caution mixed with curiosity. He pushed the fruit under the gap. She picked it up and stared at it, sniffed it, then took a small bite. She froze. Her eyes widened again. This time for a new reason. She took another bite. Bigger. Then another. She finished the fruit quickly, then looked at him. Really looked. Not with suspicion, but with something that felt like a silent thank you. And then she did something that made Jace's heart skip. She reached out and gently pushed one of the protein bars back toward him. A gift she was sharing. Jace was stunned. He took the bar slowly and nodded. "Thank you." Her lips parted slightly. Not a word. But she tried. The sound that came out was soft, broken, like a breath. It wasn't a growl. It was a beginning. But not everyone was happy. The next morning, Jace found a warning slip on his bed. "You're getting too close. She's dangerous. Stay in your place." There was no name, no signature, just a silent threat. Jace crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. He returned to her again anyway. And once more her eyes followed him the moment he stepped into the hallway. This time he smiled first. The power flickered again that night. The base was always quiet after sunset. Too quiet. The buzzing lights, the heavy doors, the thick silence. It all made the underground lab feel like a tomb. Jace couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her, about the way she had pushed food back toward him, about how her eyes followed him every time like she was waiting for something, or someone. So he got up. Even though his shift was over, he walked the silent corridor toward cell 9. The guards were gone. The cameras in this part of the hallway had been glitching all week. No one would see. As he approached her cage, he didn't knock. He just stood still. And then he heard it. A sound. Faint. Soft. Like wind through old wires. He stepped closer, ears sharp. It was her voice. She was whispering. Not in English. Her native tongue, slow and broken, almost like a chant. But it wasn't angry, it sounded more like crying. Jace stepped quietly near the bars. She didn't see him. She was curled up in the far corner, rocking slightly, whispering the same words again and again. Vela, Shira, Mela Torai, Mela Torai. Over and over. Her voice cracked, shook, and then she gasped and let out a quiet sob covering her face. Jace's chest tightened. He knew that kind of pain. He'd seen it before in soldiers who lost friends in battle, in children from burned villages. She wasn't just caged physically, she was haunted. The next morning, Jace took a risk. He copied the audio clip from his datapad and gave it to an old translator bot in the storage room. Long broken and forgotten, but still good for decoding languages. It took hours. When the screen finally lit up, it displayed one line. Please don't take me back. Please. Not again. Not the white room. Jace froze. The white room was the interrogation chamber in the lower levels. He had never been inside, but he'd heard stories, rumors, screams. Now it made sense. Why she shook when she saw guards, why she flinched at footsteps, why she didn't speak. They hadn't just locked her up, they had broken her. That night, Jace did something reckless. He brought a blanket, he folded it carefully and placed it just inside the bars. She was awake. Her eyes followed his hands, her breathing fast. It's okay, he said gently. Just to keep you warm. She looked at the blanket, then at him. Her fingers moved slowly, unsure. Then she reached out, pulled it close, and wrapped it around herself, tight, like she was scared it would be taken. And then, something unbelievable happened. She looked at him and whispered, "Thank you." 2 words, in his language. Jace's heart nearly stopped. He crouched lower, eyes wide. "You speak?" She didn't answer. But she didn't need to. She had said enough. Later that night, as he walked back to his room, Jace didn't see the shadow standing near the control panel at the far end of the hallway. A figure had been watching. Recording and smiling. The next morning, Jace was summoned early, not by a soldier, not by a message, but by 2 guards waiting at his door. "Commander wants to see you. Now." He didn't argue. He followed. The walk to the command room felt long, heavy. Inside, Commander Trell sat behind a metal desk. Cold eyes, no smile. "She spoke to you, didn't she?" the commander asked. Jace said nothing. Trell stood up slowly, then threw a data chip onto the table. She said, "Thank you." 2 words. In English. "To you." Jace stayed still. "You were ordered not to interact, not to engage. Feed and leave. That was your job. She's not dangerous," Jace replied carefully. "She's scared, she's been tortured." Trell's face didn't change. "That's above your rank. Stay in line. One more act of sympathy, and you're out." Jace left the room without a word. But deep inside, something had changed. That evening, Jace returned to her cage. He walked slowly, more cautious than before. She was sitting with the blanket he gave her, wrapped tight around her shoulders. When she saw him, her face lit up, not with a smile, but something softer. Familiar. Trust. He knelt by the bars again. I shouldn't be here long, he whispered. They're watching now. Her eyes lowered as if she understood. Still, she slid closer to the bars, closer than ever before. For the first time, their hands rested near each other, separated only by a finger of space. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It felt safe. Then she leaned in, eyes gentle. Jace, she whispered. His name. From her lips, it sounded like music. What's your name? He asked softly. She paused, as if trying to remember who she was before the pain. Then she whispered, Era. Era, he repeated. It's beautiful. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard her own name in years. Suddenly, the hallway lights dimmed. Jace turned fast. A tall figure stepped from the shadows. It was Officer Krell, one of the guards who laughed the loudest about the beast in Cell 9. You're really getting cozy with the freak, he said. Jace stood quickly. I'm just doing my duty, Krell smirked. Your duty's about to get you court-martialed. Touching, talking, giving gifts to a prisoner? What do you think this is? A love story? Jace clenched his fists. Behind him, Era had pulled the blanket tighter and backed into the shadows. Krell took a step forward. Then another. Suddenly, Jace stepped between Krell and the cage. His voice was low and steady. She's not a freak. Krell chuckled. Keep saying that, we'll see how long before she snaps your neck. Then he turned and walked away, laughing under his breath. Later that night, Jace left a note under his mattress just in case something happened to him. He wrote everything down. What he saw, what he heard, what she whispered in the dark, and he ended with one final line. She is not the monster in the cage, but maybe we are. The next time he visited, Era reached through the bars, not for food, but to touch his hand. He didn't pull away. And in that quiet moment of forbidden kindness, Jace realized he couldn't protect her from behind bars. He'd have to break every rule to set her free. The base felt darker now, not because the lights had dimmed, but because Jace had opened his eyes. He couldn't stop thinking about Era, her voice, her scars, her silence. The way she had whispered his name like it was the only word she remembered from a better life. She had been called a savage. But Jace had seen her tremble from loud footsteps, cry silently when no one was around, and share food with him. That wasn't savagery. That was survival. That night, Jace broke a rule. He waited until the lab wing was empty. Then he slipped into the main archive room using an old access card he'd borrowed from a sleeping officer. He typed in her prisoner number, X9FN127. The file was labeled Alien Combatant, Extreme Threat Level. But when he opened the logs, the truth hit him like a punch to the chest. There was no combat report, no capture in battle, no record of her hurting anyone, just one blurry photo, Era in chains, bleeding, held by 2 armored traders. The tag read, Acquired from merchant ship Corin Fang, Slave Market, Orbit 43. Slave, not prisoner. She wasn't captured. She was bought. Jace's hands shook. He kept reading. The bite incident that got her caged? The file showed the full footage. Era hadn't attacked anyone. A guard had tried to touch her while she was restrained. She fought back. That was her crime. She defended herself, and they locked her in that cold, metal cell like she was an animal. Jace felt sick. He leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen. She had never been the monster. They had. Suddenly, the room lights turned red. Security alert. He panicked, shut the terminal, and slipped out through the back hallway. His heart pounded all the way back to his room. But he knew one thing for sure now. He couldn't leave her there. The next morning, he returned to Era's cage. She stood when he came. Not afraid. Not hiding. He knelt again, closer this time. Era, he whispered. I saw the file. I know what they did to you. She didn't move, but tears welled in her golden eyes. No more lies. he said. "You were never the monster." Her lip trembled. Slowly, she pressed her forehead against the bars, and without thinking, Jace did the same. A quiet moment, two hearts, divided by steel. But not for long. Later that night, Jace began planning. He studied the patrol routes, the guard rotations, the emergency exit tunnels behind the storage room. If he waited too long, they'd take her back to the White Room. She wouldn't survive it this time. He had to move fast. Far away, in the upper tower, Commander Trell watched the camera feeds with narrowed eyes. "He's getting too close," Trell said coldly. "Prepare for termination order. The subject is no longer useful. The plan was suicide." Jace knew it. But leaving her there, knowing what they were about to do, that was worse. He had seen the notice on the internal logs. Short. Cold. Subject X9 to be removed from cell and transferred to Section 12. Immediate. Dissection order confirmed. Dissection, not trial, not transfer. Execution by science. They didn't even call her by name. That night, the base lights dimmed early due to a system check. Jace knew this was his only window. He wore civilian clothes, stuffed a small med kit, energy bars, and a stolen guard pass into his pack. Every step down the hallway felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff. When he reached cell 9, Era was already standing. She could feel something was coming. Her eyes locked onto his. He pulled out a small device. Thin, sharp, a laser cutter. He looked her in the eyes. "Tonight, we leave." She said nothing, but she nodded. Once. Slowly. Jace deactivated the shock lock. The chains dropped with a soft clink. Era didn't run. She waited for him to guide her. Still, too weak to move fast. He pulled her arm gently. "Stay low. Stay close." They slipped down the corridor, Jace holding her steady. The back wing of the base was full of forgotten storage rooms, just as he had hoped. They made it to a maintenance tunnel behind a locked panel. He tapped the stolen guard code. Beep. Click. Open. But just as they slipped inside, a voice echoed behind them. "Halt." Jace froze. Two security bots had spotted movement. Red eyes flared. Alarms blared. Era flinched, backed against the wall. Jace grabbed her hand and ran. The tunnel was narrow, made for wires and old air pipes. Jace ducked, scraped his shoulder on metal, kept moving. Behind them, electric pulses flew. Blue sparks, lighting up the dark. Era stumbled. He caught her. "I've got you," he said through gritted teeth. She tried to run, but collapsed. Her legs gave out. She was too weak. He didn't hesitate. Jace lifted her into his arms, sweat pouring down his face. The metal floor burned his boots. The pipes above hissed with pressure. But he didn't stop. One final door. An old ladder led up to the surface. Jace climbed. Era held close to his chest. His arms screamed in pain. His heart pounded. But he didn't let go. Above them, the hatch was sealed with rust. He reached up and slammed the override panel. Beep. Access granted. The door burst open, and moonlight poured in. Real sky. Fresh air. Era gasped. It was her first time seeing the stars in over a year. They were outside now, behind the cliffs far from the base. The transport shuttle Jace had hidden was still there, cloaked under a cover of old netting and rocks. He placed her gently inside. She gripped his hand. "Jace," she whispered, breathless. He smiled. "You're free, Era. But we're not safe, yet." He fired the engines. They shot into the sky, just as explosions rocked the base behind them. Back in the command room, Commander Trell slammed his fist on the table. "Find them," he shouted. But it was too late. The cage was empty, and the girl, the one they called Savage, was gone. The shuttle drifted through space for 3 long days. Jace sat beside Era every hour, watching her sleep. Her body was still weak, but her breathing was steady now. No alarms, no chains, no cold cell floors. only silence and stars. She had not spoken much since the escape. Only his name, once or twice. But when she opened her eyes, she always looked for him first, like he was the only thing she still trusted in the universe. On the fourth day, the shuttle landed quietly on a hidden colony moon. It was a place where exiles and survivors lived. No governments, no armies, just peace. Jace had paid a smuggler with everything he had saved. "I need a home for her," he said, "somewhere safe." And now, they had it. A small cabin near a crystal blue lake. Wild trees, gentle wind, a warm sun. For the first time, Era stood outside without fear. She touched the grass with her bare feet, looked up at the sky, raised her hands, and smiled. Jace had never seen her smile before, not once. It was the kind of smile that broke your heart, not from sadness, but from relief. Days passed. He built a garden. She helped water the flowers. He hunted small game. She cooked it slowly, carefully. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. Sometimes love grows in silence. Sometimes it doesn't need loud words or fast touches. It just needs someone to stay. One quiet night, Jace sat by the fire. Era walked over and sat beside him. She held something in her hands, a soft cloth folded carefully. "Gift," she whispered. He blinked. "For me?" She nodded. He opened it. Inside was a small carving, rough, made from wood. Two figures, side by side. One human, one alien. He looked at her, surprised. She placed a hand on his heart. Her eyes were glowing in the firelight. Then, in her softest voice yet, she said, "Mate." One word, but it shook his soul. Tears filled his eyes. He reached for her hand and held it tight. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. "Not ever again." Months passed. No soldiers came. No trackers. Just peace. Era slowly learned more words. She began to hum when she cooked. She started planting flowers near the cabin, and sometimes she laughed, a real soft laugh that Jace thought he'd never hear. One night, as stars filled the sky, Jace looked at her and smiled. "You were never the savage," he said. She looked back and touched his cheek gently. "No," she said. "I was lost." She paused, then leaned into him. "But you found me."